Well, in theory, if I can ask by answering in theory, it means that putting the child into focus to take measures to ensure that whatever we need to do with and for children in contact with the justice systems takes the best interest of the child into consideration. Now, the first thing that I should like to emphasize is the issue of re-victimization, which is a common problem because of the repetitive interviews that often need to be, are taking place in the investigation of cases in which children are either victims or witnesses. Now, we know that, for example, children that experience sexual abuse, it can be a great trauma for the child to disclose about the abuse, and oftentimes the child is put in a position where she or he needs to repeat his disclosure in different locations to different people, for example, police, prosecution, and the court system. Now, a measure to ensure the best interest of the child would be to try to have a joint investigative interview in which the child would have the possibility to disclose whereby the representatives of the various agencies would be able to observe, and this could be documented, for example, videotaped, and then applied in the further investigation in the work of the prosecution and the court proceedings. So that is just an example of a measure that could be taken to avoid the child from going through re-victimizing repetitive interviews in different locations. It's just an example of it. Another example would be to ensure that people that have a role to play in communicating with the child are trained professionals that have the capacity to communicate with the child in a child-friendly manner, in a sensitive manner, that are experienced in communicating with children and have a good basic knowledge on the child's development and capacity. There are now possibility by the aid of modern technology even to allow the child to give his or her testimony in child-friendly settings outside the court setting. I can mention an example from my country where we take dispositions or statements from child witnesses in what we call the Children's House, which is a child-friendly facility, a house in a residential area designed for children to feel comfortable. We believe this is extremely important, as the possibility of the child to give his or her account greatly enhances if the child feels comfortable. It's well-known fact that the higher the anxiety level of the child, the less information we can retrieve from the child. So the more comfortable the child feels, the more likely it is that he or she will be able to give us the information that we need for pursuing the case further in the justice system. The Nordic countries have taken measures to ensure child-friendly or child-sensitive approach by setting up the so-called barnahuses, or the children's houses. There are, of course, many other countries that have also taken important steps in this direction. I know that in England, for example, in the UK, oftentimes children do not need to be actually in the same chamber as the offender, but in a facility next to the courtroom, where the child does not need to face the perpetrator, and that I feel is very important. And there are a number of other ways in which in Poland I could refer to the so-called blue rooms, again another measure whereby the investigative interview or the statement of the child is taken outside the actual court setting. It's very important that the child does not need to meet the offender during the court proceedings. I think there may not be a one explanation for this, but it's certainly the fact that the legal environment in the different European countries does vary in terms of the possibilities to make deviations from the more sort of traditional setup of the court system. But I feel that there is, particularly after the Lanzarote Convention and now the Council of Europe guidelines on child-friendly justice, I can feel the momentum in Europe to take a decisive step in order to improve this situation. I'm extremely optimistic. If we look back 10 years from now, we can see that we have gone a long way. And after 10 years from now, I believe that there will be a totally different approach, dominant in ways in which we deal with children coming into contact with the justice system. I think our ability to understand children, to respect their wishes, will continue to grow as the emphasis on the participation of children, their participatory rights, will increase, and I can see the movement overall of Europe.